Mark, let's jump into our conversation.
Sure.
So everybody watching today, we're talking about blockchain. I coined this conversation today, blockchain at scale, because I believe that SkyThread is now positioning themselves to help us to bring blockchain to scale within the aviation industry. But Mark, people are always interested in knowing a little bit about your background and how did you get to where you are? Why do you even care about blockchain? And just what was your journey to get there?
So great question. Just to start, my worldview is that the industry comes before the technology. So I'm an industry person first, and I look to see how emerging technology can solve industry problems, and get very focused on that. And my background in as I said, digital and MRO is for the bulk of the last decade. I've been focused primarily on working on big predictive maintenance platforms. I worked on some of the largest platforms that were built by airframers and OEMs, and I worked on predictive maintenance problems with airlines across 5 continents. And coming from the space of, call it the digital talking heads, or the digital supply chain, right? We like to boast that modern aircraft generate terabytes of data per flight, and that we live in this rich world of data, and it's just easy to now take it all and drive value from it. And what I found in my experience working with the end customers, with the airlines, is that that's not at all true. And I'll point out one of our guests, Willie, who's a good friend, actually taught me exactly how much data most commercial aircraft generate per flight per day, because he was at Teledyne at the time and was working on data services for the DFIDUs and has a better position than most to know. And there's a wide gap, right? So while we get very excited about the 787 and the A350 generating all this data, on average, when you look at it, and you realize, well, most aircraft aren't 787s and most aircraft aren't A350s. The average aircraft generates around 30 megs a day. But more critically than that, what I found was just as important as the data that's being generated from the aircraft is actually the data that's written about the aircraft, that's created not from the aircraft, but about the aircraft, and maintenance information systems and ERPs. And when you look at how to really drive value for data and for digital transformation in the industry, my epiphany was that is where we should be focused. That is the pivot. So if we could take not the data necessarily today that's coming from the aircraft, and that's all well served by a whole range of prognostics and predictive programs, but data that is transactional data or maintenance data, that's put into the MES or the MIS, maintenance information system. That's where you can, take a lot of operational costs out of the industry. So on the technical side, that's the pivot. Why blockchain and how blockchain comes into the picture? Well, that speaks to a second thing I saw in the industry, which I think is the chief challenge and problem that we at SkyThread are working to solve, which is how do you build an ecosystem of trust between actors that inherently are competitive and for where sharing data can create conflict of interest. And blockchain is uniquely suited as a technology to do that. It can't do it on its own. It needs to fit with a consortium that can come together to, in a pre-competitive environment, create consensus-driven data governance. And that's also what SkyThread has started in a consortium called Independent Data Consortium for Aviation. So when you look at, how do you leverage the data that exists today that's rich about the aircraft, it may not even be digitized, but in wider and wider swaths is digitized. And then how do you solve for data governance? We see that as unlocking the keys to scale. And I apologize if you hear any background. That's my son who's gotten up as energy filled as he gets off the gets to kindergarten this morning.
Well, hey, Mark, that's okay. We all understand we're all working under different circumstances.